What made you want to become a ballet dancer?
I think my first impressions when I was young was the films, actually, of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and Sid Charisse and Gene Kelly. So I was more inspired by dance because of the films. I used to watch those. But I kind of fell into ballet. It wasn't my first passion. And I slowly just fell more and more in love with it. And didn't really fall in love with the performance side, but just more with the classroom and being and studying on the technique and the lines and shapes and stuff. So it's for my teachers, really. They're the ones that inspired me.
And how was your experience at White Lodge as a student?
It was hard, but incredibly valuable. I only now understand how important it was. I think my first year I had a really tough time because I was very far behind everybody else. So I came in 2 years late and I hadn't done ballet that seriously. So I came in and I realised how far behind I was and I thought, oh no, I was never going to catch up. So my first year was really tough and I nearly actually stopped altogether because I didn't think I could keep up with everybody else. Until I got into my fourth year, my second year, when I was 14, and suddenly I just obviously had enough determination and stubbornness, and I made a big improvement, and suddenly it was the best thing ever. So it did take me a good year to actually feel comfortable that I was achieving and fitting in, basically. So it wasn't easy, but it was fun.
And do you have any rituals before you go on stage or anything superstitious?
Yeah, that's funny. I always try to keep away from any of those. So I didn't want to use anything as an excuse that something would go wrong. So I purposely did everything differently every time I got ready. I knew so many dancers and so many great dancers also that had rituals and certain ways to do things that I was purposely didn't want to choose any. Yeah. So I think the only thing I did was like a night before a show I would never go out. So I would always stay in. And during the day I would really pace myself. So there was certain disciplines I put on myself, but not a ritual.
What were some of your favourite roles?
Really difficult. Out of the classics, I suppose Swan Lake was my first big classic when I was 20, and so it was always very important to me. And also I did it in my school performance, I think, with that one. So that was always very special. But then something like Juliet, Romeo and Juliet was probably one of my most favourite, because you were an actress at the same time, and I loved that, but really difficult to choose. And then out of all the kind of one-act ballets, I did enjoy the more dramatic roles, but I loved the abstract pieces as well. So it was more working with choreographers, so having Kenneth to work with on like Song of the Earth or Winter Dreams, and then like Christopher Weldon, we had ballets made on us, and those was always going to be very special, but really hard to choose. I did enjoy the diversity, not being typecast.
And do you have any advice for people coming out of like a classical trained school to do contemporary, or how do you?
I think now what is expected of you is you have to be incredibly diverse. So contemporary dance is just really is important. Your base, the best thing you could do is classical dance for your largest amount of years. And then to learn contemporary dance from there is so valuable, because it makes you soften the upper torso, because we become very stiff when we're classical dancers, and to be able to know when to let that go, and you learn different strengths from contemporary dance, which I think is so valuable all around. But as many styles as you can get into part of your CV is kind of important, because then you are incredibly versatile and you can change very easily. And that's also, I think, a very rounded dancer. Then you are able to achieve many different things. And that's what's exciting as well for choreographers, that you are very diverse and changeable.
Were there any major inspiration dances you had when you were?
I had lots of inspirations, and mainly came from teachers that had been dancers. But I suppose out of dancers, Sylvie Guillaume was a great, opened many doors for me, because being a tall girl, as an English dancer as well, was quite unseen. And so it was very hard to get accepted to being tall. And when she came along, she guested, I think, literally the first year I got into the company. When I was 19, it's already been a touring company. And that was like a revelation, because there was another tour principal, and I thought, wow, gives me opportunity to be a Giselle, or a role that probably wouldn't be expected of me. And so that she did open many doors for me, and I really felt confident then that I had a chance.
Yeah.
So those people are important. I mean, there was many dancers that were sort of mentors and helped me understand what you could produce from what was seen as I was more lyrical and kind of a strong dancer, to create a different emphasis and work on quick footwork, or being fast and all those sorts of things. It wasn't expected of me because I was taught. So you had to be able to change and get a different perception of what a dancer I could be. So I loved being able to adapt, and I basically learned that from the dancers that were around me, and learned from their skills. So you always learn from everybody else, and just watching is amazing.
And sorry to ask, but what was your worst moment on stage?
I've had many. They'll always, it's just part of the job, sadly. I did fall badly in one of my first principal roles. I was playing Gamzatti in the ballet, and I slipped, and it was the very beginning of our entrance, me and Jonathan Cope, and I slipped so badly that I slightly concussed myself. And it was in a performance, and I remember getting up and not really knowing where I was, and that was a pretty bad experience. And I remember coming off stage, and Natasha McCarver, whose production was on the side of the stage screaming at me, going, come on, you can get it together. And I was like, totally dazed and very bruised because I'd landed on my hip. So that was not a great experience. I've gone blank once as well, and I will never forget that. Even though it seemed like 4 minutes, it's actually probably only 4 seconds, but it felt like a big thing. But it's odd what happens. You get distracted by certain things, and it's always keeping that focus. It's not easy.
And what advice would you give students coming out of the Royal Ballet School?
Basically, never say no. Always say yes, and just be really open to change and things, and don't be worried about change, and be open to everything that's being thrown at you. So go, that's not me. Just be open and go, okay, I'm sure I can get something from this. So there's basically, through all your education, especially through dance, especially, you learn. You never stop learning, basically, and that will just keep adding to your career. And I think take a bit from everybody you work with. It's essential.
Were you ever rebellious at school?
I was a bit, yes. It took me a while to kind of put my energies in the right place. It's a very diplomatic way of saying it. So I was, when I first got in the school, so I was 13, and the disciplines I found really hard to start with, and keeping to those disciplines. I was a bit wild. Say the least. I don't want to say what I did. I never got suspended or anything like that. Some girls and guys in my class did get suspended, but I didn't. But I think it was just getting used to the disciplines and understanding that they were there to help you. And as you mature, you realise how important those are and how they actually carry through the rest of your life, whatever path you choose. So the disciplines you learn here will just last forever, and I never forget them actually. And I try and put them onto my own kids. They're very valuable. Yeah. But not, always hard to get used to it first. And you want personality. You want to be a character. You don't want to be forgotten. You don't want to fit in too well.
Yeah. And do you have a favourite part of the exhibition at all?
For me, to have my costumes up and looked after it was the best thing ever. Because to be given them in the first place was amazing. And I just didn't know how to look after them. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to ruin them. And I thought they're so valuable, and people have spent so much time on them, and they're part of my memories and experiences that I'd love those to look after. So it couldn't be in the best place. So I'm very happy about that. So it's lovely to see them up, my costumes. That's kind of weird to see it come to life. So again, after a long time.
Yeah.